takes me a little longer to do stuff. All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. St. Patrick's Day is good. We're going to hear an hour of Tool. It's going to be all about Maynard James Keenan. Can we turn that up? Somebody turn that up? Wait, Jordan, which one is best? Oh, it's this one. Got it. So I guess tonight, I wasn't really going to talk too much about my process, but I was going to kind of talk about how I started doing the work that is on the show posters. And also my voice is going to crack a lot because I'm a little nervous. So it's going to sound like I'm 13 all night. But, so I guess like the basic idea, behind this like flag image was that it's kind of this like iconic image, obviously because it's a flag, it's supposed to be iconic, but also because it's like I wanted people to have it up in their houses because it's like forced patriotism in like a really bizarre way. Which I don't even know why that was like relevant. Anyway, I just thought that was really fun. So anyways, I also thought that this like really represented rock and roll, which is something that's like super important to me in my life, which is why I got interested in show posters and stuff in the first place. And rock and roll is like a totally outdated term, and no one uses it in the sense that it's like, you know, original in this like original context. And rock and roll now is like whatever, dead and whatever. But to me, it's still like all, you know, like when people say pop music, it takes like all genres and like puts them under this one giant category of pop music. It's like rock and roll is basically just pop music. And I grew up basically like totally obsessed with pop culture and music culture especially. And I was like a hardcore nu metal kid, and I was really deep in that. And I think the first time I remember being like super blown away by someone's artwork was when I saw Rob Zombie's drawings. So if that gives you any like context for what's about to happen, I've done that. So this is like, oh yeah, I was going to talk about this quote. You guys know that Chuck Berry song, School Days? There's one of the main lines in the song is, "Hail, hail, rock and roll, deliver me from the days of old," which is kind of recently a way that I've been like thinking about music and art and like looking for some. It's a funny phrase because it kind of asks for this genre, which I guess at the time was new, to take them away from, you know, what the establishment or whatever was keeping him from, you know, progressing in some way. And now I still think it's relevant, and I think that like if you use rock and roll as like an umbrella word in the same way as pop music, I think that like you can still progress forward. And I think that it's like a really good springboard for that. So I've been thinking about rock and roll as like a source for, just a source for ideas and a source for direction. So this is like one of the first posters I did that I was really proud of. And Jason Urek, everybody should know Jason Urek, he's like the best dude. That probably sounds great on tape. He's like the best dude. He asked me to do this poster for him when he put the show at Sonar one time. And I felt like I should go all out because when I was in high school, I was super into Tortoise. And I grew up in the Midwest, so they were a huge deal because they're from Chicago. And this is before I heard Miles Davis, because I went to everything like totally ass backwards. I found Tortoise through like Rob Zombie, and then I found out about Miles Davis through Tortoise. So, so this was like a huge deal, and for me at least. And so I wanted to go all out, and this was like the first time that I really like felt like I went really hard and like made a poster that I was super proud of. And so I thought it was like a good jumping room. This was like, I don't even know what year that's from, like 3 years ago maybe? I've been making posters for a long time, but I feel like it hasn't been, it's only been recently that I've kind of felt super good about them as not only like show posters, but pieces of art. So, and this is like the Wordscape poster from 2010. So that must have been from 2009 or 2010. This was like probably the second poster that I was like really stoked to do. Let's see. I want to talk about how, one of the reasons why I think that it's really important that show posters be like really strong images and kind of have some kind of backstory, I think is because I think nowadays art or like fine art or visual art in a lot of ways has been totally like usurped by rock and roll and culture. I think for most of the population, like rock and roll or pop music is much more important in daily life than art is, and show posters are, and like album art, and anything that's like associated with rock and roll are like easy ways to get larger culture involved. And there's like this great article in Ian Spinonius's book, The Psychic Soviet, where he talks about, I think the essay is called Time as Money, and it's kind of a discussion about why rock and roll has usurped art and as like a predominant form in public culture of expression. And it equates like, because we put so much, because we so often say like time is money, and music is like a time-based media, then you're basically like, if someone's going to sit down and listen to your song, then they're investing a lot more of their like time, which could eventually equal money, than they would if they could like walk by a painting. Because you can, I think in the essay he says like you can go through the Louvre in like 7.5 minutes, and and like literally like go through every gallery and like, but it still takes, you know, like 80 minutes to listen to an Asia record or something. Yeah. So. Yeah, this is like, I don't know, it feels weird to talk about these because they've been up around town over the last few years, so everyone's like already seen it. But a lot of this stuff is material that I draw and then collage together and then eventually like screen print. And a lot of it came out of work that I was doing when I was at MICA, which is more like this. Like I was doing a lot of collage work because during my time at MICA, discovered Four Thunder, which was pretty much the most incredible thing I'd ever seen at that point. So I was like totally blown away by a lot of artists that I saw, and especially like the guys from Black Dice. Like Bjorn Copeland was making a ton of work that was like really like blowing me, just like totally blown my mind open. And it was just like so irreverent, but it was also like really genuine, and they really respected the art form. And so like seeing Bjorn's work, and then seeing like Oh, this is really graphic. Close your eyes. This is work that I was doing. So seeing Bjorn's work and seeing like Brian Chippendale's work and Chris Ford's work and all these people from Providence, like Matt Brinkman and Brian Ralph, who was one of our teachers at Micah, like, really just like had me thinking in a totally different direction from where I was coming from. Like I was studying classic printmakers like Albert Dürer and really making these like super dark and kind of like forced memento mori pieces. And, I saw this work and it totally just like I had to drop everything I was doing and go in like the opposite direction. So I started making this work that was, you know, in hindsight, basically like total Bjorn ripoffs. And but there's this really good quote that Billy Childish had one time where he says that in Japanese the word for copy is the same word for learn, which is really awesome because I kind of like the way I started drawing was from copying X-Men comics when I was a kid, and that's like basically how I learned to draw. I was just like copying comics all day, every day. I was totally obsessed with X-Men. That was pretty new metal. So this is Brian Chippendale's work. This is like one of the things that really got me moving in the direction that I'm in now. Is when I was making those collages, I really liked the freedom you had to kind of like ignore context or ignore content, or you could address it and you could do it in kind of like a comical way. And but a lot of times I would have a really hard time like figuring out what I like if like an image worked with the rest of the image, you know, or in the piece as a whole. And there's this Christian Mark quote from actually I think from this last issue of the New Yorker that's really good, where he talks about making collages. It's like he says there's a chance thing that happens, and you don't always control things. And says, why did you find this today and not that? But you've got this thing and you make it work, and it's the way life is, I suppose. Whatever happens, you deal with it. Which was another aspect I really liked about collage, because I was coming from this like kind of forced like dark print making, like super process oriented imagery. And it kind of allowed me to go the other way and like just let things happen. But it would sometimes get on my nerves that things weren't exactly what I wanted them to be. And I realized that Brian Chippendale was making this work that was like, he drew all his source material, and then he would screen print these like big sheets like this. These are all like just drawings he made so that later on he could collage together. But this is like an incredible print on its own. But he was just making them to cut up to make his actual work, which is also awesome. This is Sean's work. I really know Sean. But when I first moved to Baltimore, I remember seeing his work around and seeing these show posters and just being like, I gotta meet that guy. I gotta find out how he does that. And totally, yeah. What's going on? Because I remember liking Post Type a lot too, but they were kind of like real straight-laced about everything they did. But Sean was making like super wild work at the time. And I always had this one of the first shows I went to when I moved here was like kites and USA is a Monster and Video Hippos. And maybe, did you guys play? Did Bret Hart's play that show? Yeah. And that was like still to this day, one of the best shows I've ever been to in my life. And I have a flyer from that show. It's like been up in my room ever since. Yeah. So this was like this looks crazy. I think this, when I made this flyer, I was like thinking about Sean's posters a lot. And, but I can't draw like psychedelic stuff. So this is what happened when I tried to make that. But I liked some Sean's posters, the way the text was always like totally skewed, and you had to try really hard to figure out what was going on. And so I like to, it kind of like put me on this path a long time ago, and like offsetting the way that you read things, so that it's like just the slightest struggle to figure out what it says, you know? Like Floristree doesn't all fit on one line. I think it makes you focus a little harder on what's actually there. Like it's easy if you struggle to get it, then it's like you remember it a lot longer. It's one of those things where like if you see an image that's like perfect, it's easy to like forget it really fast. You can be like, oh, that was beautiful. But if you see something that was like off kilter or like a little bit wrong in it, like maybe later on you'll be thinking about it like, that was like really weird that that thing was in it, and it was so wrong. And but the awesome thing about that is that when you're thinking that whatever was wrong in this painting or this drawing was so weird and out of place, you're like still thinking about the composition of this painting, which is more than, you know, like a perfect drawing like it or something. So that like concept always really sticks in my head when I make stuff. This is like a poster for a Jim Crane lecture that's done in a similar mindset. So one of the things that like the Four Thunder guys really put in my head was that you can take these like punk principles of like anyone can do it and like do it yourself and actually make something that's super interesting. Because up until that point, I'd only experienced like a lot of like crusties and like just like bad punk art, and it never interested me. And it was really sad because one of the things that changed my life when I was younger was reading Our Band Could Be Your Life, which is this book by Michael Azerrad about the punk culture from the late 80s to early 90s. And like I think it ends like when Nevermind comes out, maybe. And but I'd never heard any of those bands when I read that. I was like 13, and like I said, I was like really into nu metal, so I was like listening to Rob Zombie, Tool, and Limp Bizkit. And then I like read about Be Happening and Fugazi and Sonic Youth, and it like really made me like rethink what I wanted out of art and out of just like culture in general. And I think that was like a super awesome thing that I think he gets a lot of flack for writing that book because he's like feeding off some culture that's like, you know, a real like tight subgroup or whatever, and had a lot of influence on people who were around at that time, but I would never have known any of those bands without that book. So I always like felt really grateful that he did that, and I felt like I wanted to show people that stuff too. Oh yeah, so this is kind of a funny joke. I thought this Future Islands is not a punk band, but I thought it would be like a really good thing to get. I think I do this a lot, and I don't necessarily realize it. But for some reason, this was like a really specific thing that I wanted to do. When Future Islands asked me to do this poster with Ed Schrader, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna give him like a real super hard punk poster. And that was like a funny thing. Like Dan just played a show at Carnegie Hall, or he's playing a show at Carnegie Hall this month sometime. And he called me and he was like, I wonder if anyone's ever made a punk poster for Carnegie Hall. And I was like, I don't really make punk posters, and probably yeah. But then I was like thinking about that really hard. Like I guess I kind of do that on purpose. But so this was like a funny thing. I thought I'd make Future Islands like a punk poster in the style of like Ryan Padavon or something, because he was a huge influence on me. And so I did my version of the My War cover for their tour. this is a poster for The Thing, which, like, John Carpenter is one of my favorite directors of all time. I think that he has a really amazing understanding of, like, character, but he also understands how to use camp really well, and that culture is really important to me. I think when I try to imagine, like, a world of my own, like, I brought these books because they're all kind of based on this ongoing idea of this alternate world, like some post-Armageddon world or something, that I try to imagine a lot when I draw, because I think it's important to imagine, like, a backstory when you draw, because it comes through. It's a little more than, I feel like, at least for me, like, imagining content, like, sometimes develops content. And I think that's something that came to me really strongly, especially while I was making collages, because you're like forced to make relationships with things. So if you give them some, like, contextual relationship in your mind, then they end up, like, having one on the page eventually. So I try to keep that in mind now, especially in these posters and stuff. But I think that John Carpenter has, like, a really good understanding of that, and he, like, has always translated that super well. And his music is amazing too. Oh, this poster I put in here because I basically ripped this pumpkin off of Noel. This is a character that Noel made up called Pumpskin. It was awesome. He lived in a puddle of slop, and I thought he was, like, a really adorable character, but it kind of like never happened. Like, what happened to Pumpskin?
It wasn't. People didn't care. So
I cared, Noel. I cared a lot. Pumpskin was really cute and foul. So when I got asked to make this Halloween poster, I was like, the people need to know about Pumpskin. So I made Pumpskin. That's, like, the other thing is, like, going to school with so many amazing artists is, like, an incredible experience, and probably everyone here went to MICA or some kind of art school, and I think everyone knows that when they're there, but I feel like I learned a lot more from my peers than I learned ever from the teachers. I mean, technically I learned how to screen print or whatever from Nick Harmonis or Brian Garner, or, something like that. But, like, when it came down to, like, ideas, I was way more interested in my peers' work than anyone's work that we saw in lectures or books or whatever. So I felt really lucky to be part of that, and to have a tight-knit group like Noel and Connor and Molly and I and several other people were in, like, a comics group, closed caption comics, where are still in closed caption comics. And but I feel like at least their work to me was always way more inspiring than anyone's work that I was seeing in books or in lectures or on TV or anything. So, and I don't know if that just, I guess that happens. You like your friend's work, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe you don't have to like your friend's work. I don't know. This was, like, a really, I had this idea for a long time about kind of, like, exposing that idea of, like, how I make the work. And I thought it would be really funny to do this, like, surrealist thing where the scissors are, like, making a collage while you're looking at it. It's like, so dumb. But I think I can't, like, a lot of rock and roll art for me, like, when I was growing up, I didn't look at a lot of work, and I got to see stuff, like, my mom was really interested in art, but she was really into, like, Impressionism, and I thought that Van Gogh was, like, super boring, and so my mom would take us to Chicago to go to the museum and go look at this stuff, and I would just be like totally uninterested, you know, like way more interested in contemporary art, but like not quite understanding it. So for me, like the middle ground between like contemporary art and this like stuff my mom was making me look at was like surrealism, and so I was super into like Dali when I was younger, and I think later on like I got really into like psychedelic art for a little bit, and I was really into Roger Dean's artwork, who's like, I'm sure you guys all know his work. He made the covers for all the Yes records, and like really hardcore like fantasy watercolors, and so that stuff like had a huge impression on me. But I thought I would do that, and you know, just like I thought it was funny. But it was also like I think a lot about Raymond Pettibon's drawings when I work, and this poster to me was like, you know the cover to Everything Went Black, that like Black Flag record. It's just like two hands holding like a pair of shears. I think about that a lot, and the scissors like come back a lot, and I think it's because that image had like a really specific like. It was like really terrifying when I was younger. Like before I'd ever heard Black Flag, I saw that record cover and I was like, oh, that band must be really hard. That's a really scary drawing. And so I think about that record cover a lot. And oh yeah, I was gonna say this quote. The guy who invented Dilbert, his name's Scott Adams. I think about this quote. I heard this when I was in school, like when I was in high school, I think. He says, creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes, and art is knowing which ones to keep, which I thought was really awesome when I was younger, and then like, for some reason that like came into my head when I saw that For Thunder work, and I didn't know it was the guy who invented Dilbert that said that, or I would have dismissed it like a long time ago, but I thought that was like really amazing, and it also kind of like went with this idea that I heard from, you know, Brian Eno had this collaborative project he did with this guy, Peter Schmidt, a painter, called The Oblique Strategies, which was like these like lateral thinking cards, like ways for him to get around, like basically like writer's block or whatever in the studio. He would have this like deck of cards, and it would say, they would have instructions on them, and sometimes they would be really simple, and sometimes they would be really wacky. You know, some examples were like emphasize the flaws, but the one that always stuck with me was honor thy error as a hidden intention. So like, I think when I started making collages, and then definitely once I started getting into this work, it was really important for me to like accept that I couldn't make things look the way I wanted them to look or the way they looked in my head, and just let them be the way that they are. And that was kind of like, to me, like a little small like self-punk revelation or something. Just like letting things be the way that they are, and understanding that that's the way it's going to be. So here's the scissors again in this Oxys poster. I thought this was a funny poster because it was like tissue, and then there's like boobs in the same poster. Oh yeah, this was like this is Judy Garland, but with like a Manson X. When I was in Italy with Noel and Molly, like, when was that, like 2007? And Molly read Helter Skelter and would like tell me about it before she went to sleep. It was like totally terrifying, the creepy crawling, and like all the stuff that the family did, and like the way that that whole community worked was so terrifying. And then so when we got back, I read Helter Skelter and got super obsessed with like conspiracy theories, and started reading into like the Kennedy assassination, and then a lot of the stuff, like a lot of old Hollywood, and like, you know, the people like the Beach Boys were involved with the Manson family, and like started putting stuff together in my head, and I realized that it was really easy to turn these people into characters because I had no like frame of reference for them. Like, I never knew them personally, and I've only seen like photos of them in books and online. And it was much easier for me to like turn these like characters from the book into like characters in this alternate universe than it was for me to like invent a character. So I just started using these people's lives as like the basis for this like totally skewed alternate thing that ended up being like part of this like marginal place. And so a lot of that stuff creeps back into the posters. And so this was like Judy Garland, I guess, seeing the flames of Helter Skelter. And this is another one I thought was really funny, because Wyatt is not a terrifying band. And this came basically directly, like this idea came from a lot of work that was like around, that I was seeing. Because like Neil Ronaldo was making all this work with smiley faces for a while, and he and I like ran a record label together and had worked with each other for a long time. And I think Lester's work was downstairs, or like maybe I had just seen those things when I got asked to make this poster. But I was also like thinking really hard about what was like the opposite of what Dan would want me to make, because I know that Dan, like when he gets in his mind like something that he wants from someone, he like wants it to be this particular thing, and if he could do it himself, he would, but he just wants it done like now. And so I was like, oh, Dan wants like a poster that looks like that Wiley poster, so I'm gonna make him a poster with a smiley face instead. But then I always think about, like, I go back to those like Fort Thunder posters. There's this really amazing book called Underground. That's like a retrospective of all the posters that they made for like 20 years or something like that. And they went like really wild with like the way that they altered all the posters. And I think that's like a punk thing. Like a lot of old punk posters were hand colored because they just Xeroxed them. And then to get people's attention, they would like, put some red marker on it somewhere. And, but then like when people got access to screen printing, it just like escalated that much higher. And so I try to take it like at least to that level, just to feel okay with myself. So that poster, I always think about this Chris Forbes poster. That's in the, this is like still from the Wonderground book. And, or a shot from the Wonderground book. I thought this poster was really incredible. Is it really crazy? This is all like new drawings and stuff I've been doing. Yeah, basically like I draw all these things. Jordan wants to know about the process. I draw all these things like on different sheets of paper, and a lot of times they're like totally different sheets of paper. And at least like the paper type is totally crazy. I draw on copier paper, or like whatever scraps I can find around. And eventually it all gets like glued together. And then I think this one has like some digital stuff in it too, because I ended up using it for some design stuff. But some of this is like made with construction paper, and these like squiggly lines are like just bars that I like moved on a Xerox machine and stuff. So yeah, the super important thing for me was when I realized that, growing up all this time as a printmaker, I was putting all this value into like this final product, and really having a hard time letting this thing not be like a really finished and complete piece. And so when I started doing collages, I tried really hard to ignore the final product and kind of make them just however, like whatever I thought was like the best idea at the time. And so that kind of like allowed me to start cutting up my own drawings, and I was like being way too precious with my own work basically. So as soon as I would let go of that, I think the work got like a bajillion times more interesting, and at least for me, like to make, it was way more fun. And so these are all just like mashed up from a bajillion sheets. And this is like some erotic stuff I did for this compilation called Sock that Connor Snexshelter put together. And they're kind of like done in the same way that I draw comics, I guess. They're not quite this is like, these are more just like still images, but this is a collage I made with Sharon Tate. And I thought it was like really interesting the way that they're kind of slanted in the exact same position. You can kind of imagine her like struggling with the knife, which is like super brutal. But, you can like so easily like put her into that place. This is when I saw Chris Ford's comics in particular for the first time was when I really knew that comics could be this amazing venue for your ideas and for like a continued story. And so this is us stuff from Power Masters, the first, I think it's from the first Power Masters book. And this is kind of like an example of how I use those characters from real life from the 60s or before together in like a storyline. I wrote this story for CCC9 that was about, it was like told from the perspective of Jackie Onassis after Kennedy had been assassinated, but I kind of imagine that instead of being assassinated, like Kennedy had found this hole in the desert that Charles Manson was always going on about, like where him and the family were going to hide out helter-skelter while the rest of the world basically burned to ash. And then he would emerge from this hole in the desert and be king of the world. And but there's a lot of crazy stuff that happened like right around Spawn Ranch and like all the areas that Manson inhabited. Like so like Robert Kennedy was assassinated in LA County, and so was like obviously like all these Hollywood stars died there, and Sharon Tate was killed there by the Manson family, and all this stuff was actually like within a relatively like small period of time, and so I thought it was really interesting that the same coroner examined all of their bodies. So this LA coroner Noguchi like became this character that was kind of like a middleman between this realm and this like escaped realm. So I kind of imagine that all these people, instead of actually dying or like overdosing or being assassinated, were actually just like looking for a way to get to this like alternative universe and like escape their previous lives. So this is all about how like Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate and Norma Jean and all those people like kind of escaped to this other place in cahoots with the Manson family. And these are both stills from the same time. And this is a record cover I did for Micro Kingdom, Reference Records. This was like one of the first times that I got asked to do like a like serious record cover or something. Like I don't know, like a product that was going to be produced that I wasn't like making myself, like a zine. And so I was really stoked to do this, and I was also really stoked because Oxes is one of my favorite bands of all time, and obviously Mark is in this band, and they're incredible in their own right. But I was like, I remember telling my brother like, one of the dudes from Oxes is like asking me to do a record cover, and he was like, I don't know who Oxes is, and I was like, what's wrong with you? I'm so stoked, and he couldn't be stoked because he didn't even know who Oxes was. But so I was really stoked to do this album cover because, like I said, like a lot of my history and art kind of came from rock and roll. And when I was younger, like I said, like I didn't really like a lot of the art that I saw in school, and I didn't like a lot of the art that I saw in museums. But I was really into album art, and I was really into like, you know, Roger Dean, and like, I remember there were like a couple of albums that always stuck in my head as like the perfect album cover. So like, I think about these a lot when I do design work, but like the Journ's GI, I think this is actually the perfect album cover. This is, to me, like the most incredible, like simple, to the point, and also like iconic thing. And forever, like this symbol of the blue circle will be associated with this band that wasn't even around for like 5 years, you know? I think that's really incredible. Plus the circle to me has a lot of kind of like meaning, and I use it a lot in my work because it is like this complete thing, and it is like, you know, the Lion King, like circle of life. But it's also like a total, it can be like everything and it can be nothing, you know, it is like a void, or it is like a hole. It just like depends on how you look at it. So I kind of see it a lot of times, and I use it in the work, like especially back in the psychomic as like the same thing where like this is like the void, like the hole in the desert, or like, you know, an orifice or a bullet wound or something like that, you know. But it's all like abstracted down to this like one shape. So for me, this like Germs logo always like stuck with me, and I think that Darby Crash knew that when he designed this logo, and he was definitely thinking about that. So that always stuck with me. And this I discovered also backwards from Rob Zombie's artwork, The Cramps. But this record cover always freaked me out when I was younger. And there was something about it that like it's not drawn very well, but it's like so bright and really bizarre. Like I never thought the Iron Maiden record covers were that good because they were like really corny. But for some reason this like is basically the same character. You know, it's basically Eddie, but way more menacing to me. And it used to freak me out a lot when I was a kid. For that reason, I think it's a nearly perfect album cover. This is obviously a nearly perfect record cover for, I don't know, because when I was younger I saw this and I was like, totally getting a boner. Rock's music. And I was like, oh, that's great marketing. That's the first time I think I realized that like sex appeal was like the way to the wallet. You know? And then it's like, oh, it's wonderful. Huge influence. Everybody just won. But also, talk about sex appeal. We'll hold that. I was really stoked to do this for Ed because Load Records put this out, and they put out a lot of bands of Fourth Thunder, and I was like, oh man, like maybe I'll get to meet the dude who runs Load and like hang out with them or something, which obviously didn't happen. That's not the way it works. But I was like super stoked because I was like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, like I love Ed and Devlin, and their music is awesome and super weird. And when I found out Load was putting the record out, I was like, that is so bizarre. You know, this label would put out like Lightning Bolt and Landed and all these super heavy bands who have like been crushing my eardrums for the last 7 years. Like they're about to put out these guys singing about love and ceiling fans and stuff, rats, and so I was like really excited for them with that. I'm really stoked they asked me to do this. So I made them a dog scientist because to me, like putting a collie's head on a scientist was the equivalent of like Ed's like goofy face on a you know, on Load Records. They were like, these are like the scissors again. This is like for just reusing these ideas, you know? Gotta make that cash, reuse that idea. I didn't get paid for that liturgy poster, so this is the first time I got paid for these scissors idea. Actually, I still haven't been paid for this. I should this guy's really good, Jake Lingen. He's like a young kid from Chicago. Super weirdo kid, but he makes really good music. So I also make music, obviously. A lot of you know I'm in WeChat, which was another thing that really changed the way I work, I think. It's like when Connor and Noel asked me to play with them after Lane left the band. It took me I basically learned how to play bass to be in that band because I thought they were like the coolest band in Baltimore. And they had so many awesome songs. And they were just like super good friends, you know? But I always felt kind of like left out because they were always like having a really like rocking good time. And I was like playing some new guitar loops, like being real quiet. But I wanted to like rock. And then when they asked me to be in the band, I was just like totally stoked. And it kind of like let me run free after I like released that energy or something, like with a lot of other ideas I had in my head. And so eventually I like quit playing new guitar loops and started doing this blonde material, which is really fun for me because I kind of treat it the same way I treat collages, where I can kind of do whatever I want. I don't have any like restrictions on myself, which was a really hard thing to get over. Because I play games with myself all the time when I work. I want to do like something really crazy, but you have to like start with some kind of restriction, or you just don't have a starting point. So for a long time I thought like, oh, my work is like this, and I really want my work to be like this thing. But I kept having these ideas that were like outside that, and I would hesitate to do them because they didn't fit in this thing that I thought was my work or something. So this for me was like an outlet, and WeChat too, for like a lot of the ideas I had that didn't fit. And you know, my old view of my work or whatever. These are all designs for like tapes. These 2 tapes are about to come out. And I used to run a label with Neil Ronaldo called Lost Coast Records. And we would put on shows and stuff sometimes. And that was like a lot of fun, but it proved to be a lot more work than I thought it would be. Putting out cassette tapes is not as easy as it sounds. And so I'm about to start doing that again. This is a new label I'm starting called Marginal Profits. And this is like some work I've been working on recently. I'm kind of trying to get out, like I said, try to work on ideas that didn't fit previously, and so I have like a lot of ideas for sculptural work, which I've avoided for a long time because it's terrifying, and my mind doesn't work that way. And one of the things as a printmaker that I have a real struggle with is like, if you can't make 100 of it, it's not worth like doing, you know? And Jordan, you probably know what I'm talking about, right? Like,
Yeah.
like why would I even like spend time doing this if I can't like have 100 of them to sell at the end, or like, you know, like get rid of or disperse in some way. So I'm trying to go back to like making singular pieces, and I can't really treat my drawings that way because the process, they end up being screen prints eventually because they're really gnarly and like scotch taped together and stuff. So you can't like treat that as a piece, I feel like, because I'm still stuck in that like finished world or something. But a sculpture is something that I can like build and be happy with, and only build one of because it takes a lot of work. So I built this sculpture that was kind of based on the same idea of Kennedy kind of escaping this realm. And it was called Twins or Moribund or whatever. It had a bunch of titles originally. But this is a still from this box that I built in a show in Houston. And then I'm about to start doing these prints for this show and New to Shame next month that are like burn residue prints. So I'm still kind of figuring out the exact logistics of this, but I'll be like using candles to create like a print through like the burn residue that they leave. Like paraffin candles like leave like smoke residue or some kind of residue on the paper. And I kind of wondered, like, if you make a drawing with candles and light them all, why can't that be a print? And then you can additionally print from like the burnt residue, and then also have like the sculptural element of like the candles that produce the print in the first place, which is something you can't do with most printmaking. I mean, you can't like bring your press to the gallery or whatever, and like, oh yeah, this is part of the process. Here it is. This is the work part of the process. Yeah. So, I don't know how that was.
We have a couple minutes for questions.
Does anybody have any questions? No last question.
I was wondering, like, do you think of yourself, just because I think like people see your work mostly when you make show posters. Like, I know of course that you make posters and stuff, but do you think of yourself as a designer more, or as like maybe a painter or something?
Well, I wasn't like trained to do design work, so I kind of never like expected to do that. And to be realistic, when I was younger, I was like very against design, and I thought it was like super unnatural. But the more I looked at it, the more interested I was in it. And I don't know if I would like say that I'm a designer because I don't actually know anything about design. And like I still use Photoshop 7.0 on my computer, and I still haven't figured out Illustrator, and I don't understand any of like the programs you would need to actually be a designer. I still do everything by hand pretty much. But I'm interested in that stuff. And I'm not really like just a printmaker, and I'm not really like, I guess I kind of like think of myself in the same way that I like to think about my work, which is that like, if I made it, then it's mine. So you can kind of like do whatever you want in that way. So I'm an artist. I don't like categories, you know. It's like what Brendan Sullivan says about relationships and stuff. We don't want to put any names. We don't want to put names on it. Sorry, Brendan. Yeah.
I just had a question about that. The last two images you showed, were those part of your process, or are those
Well,
like articles?
not really. You're talking about these, like this and the
Yeah.
this was like a proposal for the show in Houston. Like Open Space did a show at like an exchange show at a gallery called the Joanna in Houston, and they asked for proposals. Like if you have the work, then you could just show them the work. But I hadn't built it at the time, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to build it because it was going to take a lot of time and money. So they asked for proposals for the show in Houston. So this is just a proposal for the piece. And this was also kind of like just an explanation for the people at New to Shame of like how this will be done in the most simple terms. You know? So and I don't like it. I didn't intend to show these ever or anything, but
Are you going to bring the candles? The candles will be part of the show?
yeah. I think that they're like really important as like a drawing element.
We have time for one more.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that you brought up earlier was that you were interested in potentially like that maybe I misunderstood you, but like posters having the ability to not necessarily have content. I'm just curious, like, how you, because you were talking about content as sort of, you're imagining, what'd you say, like something like you're imagining like situations to make content, you're imagining content to make content. And I was just curious, like, how you feel about content, because I feel that you approach it differently than a lot of people do.
Yeah, no, I think it's super important to have some content in the work, like no matter what it is. I think it, like when I see like a punk poster or something that's like, oh, like a rabbit with an eye patch or something, like, it's like, I'm totally gonna forget that and not ever gonna question why that's there or something. And for me, like, I want in my work, well, I do these posters because I'm interested in the artists and I want to collaborate with them in some way. But I also want to make my own work. So I try to make them my own work by putting the content that I'm interested in into the posters. Like with the Judy Garland poster or like the Liturgy poster or something like that. I think it's important to, if you're gonna ask people to take the time to look at your poster, you should also like give them something to look at, or like give them something to think about beyond that why I was playing somewhere. Like, because realistically, like, why I was gonna play again next week or something, and like, why would they look at your poster? Or not even why would they look at your poster, but like, why would I want to look at my own poster? Or why would I want to spend like 3 days drawing a poster if it doesn't have any reasoning behind it or something? So I try to put all that like same storytelling stuff in the work.
What's interesting to me about it is that sometimes I feel that the process, like your process, which is maybe what was interesting about your work, almost sort of puts a weird, to me at least, puts like kind of a blockade in front of those like concepts, not like in a bad way or anything, but it sort of disguises them.
Yeah.
I feel that I think about the way things are made more than I think about your content. Because I always know that you have it and I trust you with that, but I'm always, when I talk to you about things or whatever, when you speak about them, I'm like, it's always really surprising to me because I don't see it like when I see it.
That's fine. I mean, people are going to see whatever they want in work. Like, if you go to BMA and look at an Eric Fischl painting or something, like, what do you see in the Eric Fischl painting? Like, I see, like, a carousel horse and, like, a nude woman and, like, a green room. And you're going to put whatever story you want into that, and you're going to, like, assume that he has some level of content or that he doesn't have any content at all, And just people look at work differently and they see that or they don't see that. And if you don't, like, I'm not asking people to familiarize themselves with, my personal, like, artistic history in order to, like, understand a show poster.
Yeah, totally.
It's a show poster.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, like, there's this really great quote actually about that. It's like, also from Billy Childish, that's like, I think about a lot. It says, you've got to realize how unimportant your work is and also make it the most important thing you do.
Yeah.
So like when it comes down to it, it's a show poster.
Yeah.
And who cares? It's going to come down next week. But if you're going to take the time to do it, like, do it right. So I guess that's me.